"Get out now! You don't belong here!" The scream ripped across the velvet silence of the VIP airport lounge like a gunshot. Crystal glasses trembled on marble counters, heads snapped in unison, and eyes widened as two burly security guards lunged toward a single figure. Their boots thundered on polished floors, fists clenched, voices venomous as they barked orders. In an instant, the room of billionaires and aristocrats transformed into a courtroom of judgment, every gaze locked on the black nurse whose only crime was sitting where wealth and power had decreed she should not. Her bag toppled, her conference papers scattered like torn pages of her life. Their hands clamped down on her arms, rough, merciless, dragging her across the floor as gasps broke out. Some guests smirked behind champagne glasses, others raised phones to record, but none raised a hand to stop it. A woman who had dedicated her life to healing others was now paraded like a trespasser before the world's elite. Before we dive in, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comment if you want to see how this humiliation transformed into the most powerful moment on the runway. Smash that subscribe button and stay locked in, because this story is about to show you that dignity can't be dragged away, and justice can land when you least expect it. Her name was Naomi Carter, a nurse whose story was written in the silent sacrifices no camera ever caught. For 22 years, she had walked the endless halls of hospitals, the sound of heart monitors her constant companion. She had held the trembling hands of strangers in their last moments, whispered comfort into ears too weak to respond, fought through nights that blurred into mornings. Her shoes had carried her miles across cold linoleum, her scrubs faded, her heart steadfast. Naomi wasn't wealthy. She didn't own designer handbags or tailored suits, but she carried something richer, the dignity of service, the quiet pride of a life poured out to save others. That day, she wasn't going on vacation or chasing luxury. She was headed to a medical conference where her community planned to honor her with an award for extraordinary service. Former patients and colleagues, grateful beyond words, had surprised her with a first-class ticket, their way of saying, "You deserve to be treated like the heroes you are." But when Naomi stepped into the shimmering walls of the VIP lounge, where the world's richest relaxed before flights, her humanity was stripped away in seconds. The lounge itself was a fortress of exclusivity. Gold light spilled from chandeliers carved in crystal. Fine leather armchairs lined the space. Hushed conversations circled around stocks, oil deals, and international empires. Uniformed attendants glided through with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that sparkled like jewels. Here, no one wore scrubs. No one smelled faintly of disinfectant from a 12-hour hospital shift. When Naomi sat quietly in a corner with her boarding pass in hand, heads turned, eyes narrowed, whispers sparked. In this temple of money, she was the uninvited prayer. And then came the eruption. Security stormed toward her, voices violent, hands grabbing before explanations could breathe. She tried to hold up her first-class ticket, but it was slapped away like trash. Her body jolted under their grip as they hauled her across the marble floor. Laughter hissed from some corners, others recorded the scene gleefully, feeding the digital fire that humiliation always sparks. Her papers, notes for her conference speech, scattered and slid under chairs trampled by expensive shoes. She reached desperately, but the guards yanked her harder. Her shoes scraped, her dignity shattered, as she was dragged through the grand doors and dumped outside like a criminal. In the hallway, Naomi knelt on the cold tiles, her papers bent, her bag torn. Her wrists throbbed where the guards had pressed into her skin. Behind the closed doors of the lounge, the wealthy returned to sipping champagne, the incident dismissed as an inconvenience. A spectacle. Overhead, the announcement cut like a knife. final boarding call. Naomi should have been striding toward her gate with her head held high. Instead, she stood stranded, broken, replaying the humiliation over and over. But humiliation has a way of writing its own sequel, because seated aboard the very aircraft Naomi was meant to board was a man whose shadow stretched across industries and nations, Alexander Pierce, a billionaire CEO whose empire spanned technology, energy, and real estate. Pierce was a man who rarely noticed the ordinary world, but who never forgot the hands that once saved him. Years earlier, in a sterile hospital ward, when a sudden illness nearly claimed his life, it was the steady care of a nurse that pulled him through. The IV drips, the quiet reassurances, the hands that never shook when the world blurred. They were his salvation. Watching the video of Naomi's humiliation that now spread across the terminal, Pierce felt the past crash into the present. His assistant showed him the clip on a tablet. Pierce's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed. The engines of the jet roared, ready for takeoff. But Pierce stood. His voice was thunder. "Stop this jet!" Shock rippled through the cabin. To halt a flight on the runway was unthinkable, but when billionaires speak, even the sky waits. Engines silenced, the cabin stilled. And then, in an image that would etch itself across headlines, Pierce descended the jet stairs, his figure sharp against the setting sun, striding across the tarmac back toward the terminal. Inside, Naomi was still gathering her scattered papers, fighting tears she refused to let fall. The guards loomed, their smugness unbroken. Passengers trickled past, eyes sliding away. But then the doors opened, and Alexander Pierce entered. The air shifted instantly. Conversations died. Phones froze mid-recording. The guards straightened, their earlier bravado draining. Pierce's presence was an earthquake, shaking the room. He walked past the guards, past the champagne flutes, past the murmurs, and stopped in front of Naomi. And there, in front of the very crowd that had cheered her humiliation, he extended his hand. The guards recoiled as Pierce's voice crashed through the silence like thunder. The man who commanded empires now commanded justice. The whispers turned to gasps as Naomi, still trembling, placed her hand in his. And in that moment, power shifted. Together they walked back through the terminal, past the stunned crowd, past the gilded doors of the VIP lounge, and out onto the runway. Naomi's head, once bowed in humiliation, now lifted. Cameras captured every step, and by the time they boarded, the world was already watching. Seated in the finest leather seat, Naomi's bruises throbbed, but her spirit rose higher than the clouds. The humiliation intended to break her had transformed into the spotlight of vindication. Within hours, the video of the billionaire halting his jet for a nurse rocketed across the internet, sparking outrage, fury, and inspiration. Naomi Carter became a symbol of dignity reclaimed, proof that wealth cannot define worth, and that justice sometimes lands in the most dramatic ways. And so, Naomi Carter, a nurse who had spent her life saving lives, was saved herself in the very moment others tried to destroy her. Her story reminds us all, no amount of money buys the right to strip someone's dignity, and no humiliation can erase a lifetime of service. If you believe every human deserves respect, hit subscribe right now and join us, because the next story will shake you even deeper. Stay tuned. This is just the beginning.